10 hours of shift work, no breaks, no coffee, no paycheck. That is what a humanoid robot just delivered inside a real factory. The footage went around the world within hours, and the reaction was the same as always. There go the jobs. But hold that fear for a moment because it points at the wrong question. The right question is older and far stranger. What happens to the value of your hands when the machine learns to use its own? For 200 years, there was a silent deal between man and machine. The machine took the strength and the repetition. The human kept the dexterity and the judgment. That deal supported factories, trades, and entire identities. And that exact deal is being broken right now, in front of our cameras. In this episode, I will show you why the human shape of the robot changes everything, what history whispers about transitions like this one, and where manual work will most likely take shelter once the machine masters the gesture. By the end, an honest projection. 3 scenarios for the coming decade. And here is the catch. The most likely one is not the one you fear. Let's start with the deal nobody signed, yet everybody honored. Since the first industrial revolution, automation has devoured repetitive work with a brutal appetite. Looms, presses, assembly lines. But it always crashed into the same wall, the human hand. Engineers have known this paradox for decades. What is hard for a human, calculating, memorizing, repeating without error, is easy for the machine. And what is trivial for you, holding an egg without breaking it, driving a screw at an awkward angle, feeling that a part came in wrong, is absurdly difficult for it. Economists like David Otter at MIT spent careers documenting that frontier. The result was a clean division of the world of work. The machine took strength and repetition. The human kept subtlety, improvisation, and judgment. The bricklayer, the electrician, the cook, the mechanic, all of them lived protected behind that wall. The human hand was expensive, yet irreplaceable in dexterity. That is why fine manual work survived 200 years of automation that devoured almost everything around it. Except there is a detail in this story that almost nobody tells. The wall was never eternal. It was merely difficult to tear down. And now, for the first time, someone is tearing it down. On purpose. Wait until you see how. Notice why the robot's shape matters more than its intelligence. The world of work was built, millimeter by millimeter, around the human body. The height of the workbenches, the size of the tools, the width of the corridors, the maximum weight of the boxes, the steps of the ladder. Everything was designed for a body with 2 arms, 2 legs, and 5-fingered hands. A traditional industrial robot, that giant fixed arm, demands that you rebuild the entire factory around it. Safety cages, dedicated conveyors, a brand new layout. It is an investment only massive operations can afford. The humanoid robot flips that equation. It does not ask the world to change. It walks into the world that already exists. It uses the same ladder, the same pallet jack, the same screwdriver that were already there yesterday. And that means the barrier to entry collapses. The mid-sized warehouse, the workshop, the ordinary depot become automatable territory with no renovation. That is why major automakers and technology companies are betting billions on this specific shape, and not another. It is not a science fiction whim. It is infrastructure mathematics. The human body is the universal standard of the work environment, and whoever copies the standard inherits the entire environment. But the shape is only half of the revolution. The other half is what is happening to the hands, and that part is more recent and much faster. Dexterity was the last fortress of the human hand, and it is being scaled right now. in front of annual reports anyone can read. For decades, teaching a robot to manipulate objects was a programming nightmare. Every movement had to be described line by line. The part changed. Reprogram everything. That is why automation stayed locked inside perfectly controlled environments. What changed was the way of learning. Robotics discovered the same path that unlocked artificial intelligence. The new generation of robots is no longer programmed gesture by gesture. It is trained. They watch human demonstrations on video and in simulation millions of times, and they generalize the pattern. The AI Index report from Stanford University has been documenting year after year this leap in machines' ability to learn physical tasks. The same learning revolution that taught the machine to write is now being poured into the robot's hands. Picking up an object it has never seen, folding a wrinkled t-shirt, plugging in a flexible cable. Tasks that used to be academic jokes became product demos within a few years. There is still an ocean between the demo and the real shift, and we'll get there in a moment. But the direction is clear, and the speed is what most impresses even hardened engineers. The fortress is not collapsing from old age. It is being torn down with method. And what does history say about falling walls? It turns out it has seen this scene before. Twice. Come back with me to 1811 in England. The handloom weavers were the elite of physical labor. Years of apprenticeship, a dignified wage, pride of craft. Then came the mechanical looms. You probably know these men by the nickname they carried. Luddites, the machine breakers. History painted them as fools who fought against progress. But the economist Carl Benedict Fry at Oxford tells the full version in his book, The Technology Trap. The Luddites were not wrong about their own fate. They were right. The weaver who lost his trade in 1811 did not become a machine engineer. He died poorer than he had lived. Real English wages stagnated for decades while production exploded. Historians call that period Engel's pause. Prosperity did arrive, yes, but it arrived decades later for the grandchildren. And look at this cruel detail. In the aggregate, the Industrial Revolution created more jobs than it destroyed. The statistics say everything worked out. The biographies say something else. The transition is smooth in the numbers and brutal in concrete lives. That is the first lesson history whispers to today's forklift operator. The question was never whether new jobs appear. It is who survives the gap. Hold on to that word, the gap, because it returns by the end of this video. Before that, though, history has a second lesson, and that one is more hopeful. History's second lesson is the ladder. At the start of the 20th century, nearly half the workers of today's rich countries were in the fields. Then came the tractor, then the harvester, and that world ended within 2 generations. Today, a tiny fraction of the population feeds everyone else. So what happened to all those hands? They climbed. The blacksmith became a machinist. The machinist became an operator. The operator became a supervisor. The farmer's son went to the factory and his grandson went to the office. Every time the machine mastered one layer of work, the human climbed to the next layer, from doing to adjusting, from adjusting to deciding. The economist David Ader showed that automation rarely eliminates an entire occupation. It eliminates tasks and reorganizes what remains around what the machine cannot do. The ATM did not end bank tellers. It changed what being a teller means. That ladder worked for 2 straight centuries. It is the honest reason the optimists are partly right. If the pattern keeps holding, the manual worker does not evaporate. He moves upward, toward judgment over the machine. But notice that I said if, because there is a difference in this round that none of the previous ones had. and it is the one that keeps serious researchers up at night. Here is the difference this time, stated without drama and without comfort. Speed. Every previous transition lasted generations. The loom took decades to spread across England. The tractor took half a century to conquer the fields. There was time, brutal, unfair time, but time, for the son to learn a different trade from his father. The latter worked because the machine climbed one step per generation. Now, look at the current pace. The artificial intelligence models driving these robots improve in cycles of months. A new manipulation skill learned in one laboratory can be copied to an entire fleet through a software update overnight. A robot does not need school. What one learns, all of them know. Imagine climbing a ladder while someone removes the rungs below you at the same speed you climb. That is the real race. It is not that the ladder vanished. It is that it got shorter at the exact moment it got more demanding. The likely consequence is uncomfortable. The transition could be statistically small and biographically enormous at the same time. Fewer people than feared may lose their jobs, and yet those who do may not have time to relearn. That is the true squeeze. And that is why the next question matters so much. Who feels it first? The answer to who feels it first has two sides, and almost nobody mentions the second one. The first side is obvious: structured environments, logistics warehouses, assembly lines, distribution centers, places with flat floors, constant light, and predictable tasks. Robot paradise. That is where humanoids are already running pilot shifts. The World Economic Forum, in its Future of Jobs report, has projected the same direction for years. Routine physical tasks shrink, while technology and care roles grow. But now the second side, the one that flips the moral of the story. A large part of the rich world is running out of hands. Japan aged before everyone else, and Germany, Korea, and China are following the same road. Welders, caregivers, drivers, bricklayers are all in short supply. In several of those countries, the humanoid robot does not arrive as an invader. It arrives as relief. Demography is, quite literally, placing the order for the machine. That is the nexialist twist both sides of the debate tend to miss. The same technology is a threat in a young country and a reinforcement in an old one. The future of manual work will not be decided by engineering alone. It will be decided by the meeting between the robot's curve and each country's age pyramid. And if demography explains where the robot is welcome, we still need to explain where it stumbles. Because it stumbles. A lot. Let's give the machine what belongs to the machine, and the human what is still his. The list of what the robot cannot do is long, and it is the map of the shelter. First, physical chaos. The factory is tidy, the world is not. The plumber works lying under a sink in a cramped bathroom of an 80-year-old building with a pipe nobody manufactures anymore. Every house is a different country. That unstructured environment remains a nightmare for the machine. Second, the exception. The robot executes the script flawlessly until the part comes in bent. A smell betrays a problem. The client changes his mind halfway through. Detecting that something is wrong without knowing what to look for remains deeply human. Third, trust. When the work involves people, the electrician inside your home, the caregiver beside your father, trust is part of the service. We demand a standard of safety from machines that we do not demand from ourselves, and it is right that we do. And fourth, the irony of maintenance. Someone has to fix the robots. The technician who tends the fleet is the new mechanic, a manual trade created by the very machine that pressures the others. Notice the pattern across the 4 shelters. None of them is about strength or repetition. All of them are about context, judgment, and trust. Write that down, because it is the key to the final projection. Before it, one layer goes deeper. What all of this does to who we are. There is a layer of this story no spreadsheet captures. What the work of the hands does for the soul of the worker. Ask a carpenter what he feels when he runs a finger along freshly sanded wood. Ask a bricklayer what it means to look, at the end of the day, at a wall that did not exist in the morning. Manual work delivers something the office rarely delivers. Daily, visible, touchable proof that you were here. Sociologists of work have documented this for a century. A craft is not just income. It is identity. It is a place in the world. It is the ready answer to the question of what you do with your life. When the machine takes the gesture, it does not take only the wage. It takes the mirror. That is what the hollowed-out industrial regions of the 80s and 90s taught us, from England to the American Rust Belt. The unemployment passes. The loss of meaning lingers. The statistics recorded the drop in income. The communities recorded something else, harder to measure and slower to heal. Any honest projection about robots and manual work has to carry that weight. It is not enough to ask how many jobs change. We must ask what replaces the pride of a gesture done well. Hold that question. The likely answer sits in the final piece of the puzzle, the economic one, and it hides a number that changes the game. Here is the economic piece, and with it the number spreadsheets tend to reveal too late. It is not the robot's price tag. It is the bill per hour. A machine like this is expensive to buy, but it dilutes that cost across 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week, with no overtime. As production scales, institutions like the McKinsey Global Institute have been pointing to the same arithmetic in their automation studies. When the machine's cost per hour crosses the human's cost per hour on a task, adoption stops being a philosophical debate and becomes a spreadsheet decision. But economics has a second law, more subtle, that David Otter has described for 20 years. Polarization. Automation tends to eat the middle. Mid-wage, mid-skill tasks, the standard operator, the routine assembler, are the easiest to codify. What remains are the two ends, work of extreme dexterity and trust on one side, and work too cheap to justify a robot on the other. The social risk is not the mass unemployment of the movies. It is a labor market shaped like an hourglass, wide at the ends, strangled in the middle. If that reading is right, the individual question changes shape. It is no longer whether a robot will do what you do. It is which side of the hourglass you are on, and which end you can reach. And that is exactly the question the new artisan has answered. He exists, and you are about to recognize him. Let me introduce you to the manual worker of the probable future. He already exists, scattered across pilot warehouses around the world. He does not stack the box. He supervises 12 machines that stack. His day is made of what remain most human: the exception, the adjustment, the judgment. Robot 7 froze. He looks, understands, and solves in minutes what would stop the line for hours. A part came in off-spec. He decides whether it passes, goes back, or becomes scrap. The secret of his craft is intimate. He knows each machine by its sound, the way the old mechanic knew an engine by ear. Notice what happened to the skill. The gesture left the hand and climbed into the system. Instead of executing a task, he conducts an ensemble, more conductor than musician. The Future of Work reports from the World Economic Forum to MIT's research group on the subject converge on this direction. The occupations growing around automation are those of operating, maintaining, adjusting, and judging the automation itself. The irony is complete. The machine that came to imitate the human hand ended up creating a new trade for it. Less strength, more reading. Less repetition, more diagnosis. The name for this is not the end of manual work. It is a change in what manual means. But beware. This job does not fall from the sky, and it does not arrive for everyone at the same pace. This is where the three scenarios part ways. It is time for the projection. Now, put this episode together with the previous one, because they are two halves of the same movement. In the last video, we watched artificial intelligence agents enter cognitive work, the digital interns that read, write, and decide. Today, we watched humanoids enter physical work. It is a pincer. For the first time in history, automation is advancing on the hand and on the mind at the same time, driven by the same kind of learning. Previous revolutions pushed the worker from one territory to another. He left the field for the factory, left the factory for the office. This time, both territories are receiving the same wave together. And this is where the Nexulus lens stops being an intellectual luxury and becomes a survival instinct. Because if the single task, cognitive or physical, is exactly what the machine learns fastest, then human value migrates to what lives between the tasks. Connecting the workshop's problem to the client's conversation, reading the whole system, deciding what was never in the script. The machine is unbeatable at the piece. The human becomes irreplaceable at the bridge between the pieces. Not by magic, by being a generalist by nature, in a world that trained specialists for a whole century. The 20th century paid for specialization. If the pincer closes the way I described, the 21st will likely pay for synthesis. With that key in hand, the three final scenarios come into focus. This is a projection, not a prophecy. Nobody holds the script of the future, and anyone who swears they do is selling something. But if the patterns in this video hold, three scenarios cover the probable space. Scenario 1. The classic transition. Robotics hits the limits of the real world. Cost, safety, regulation, physical chaos, and adoption takes decades, the way the tractor did. The latter works. The new artisan absorbs the change, and in 20 years, we look back the way we remember the ATM. Scenario 2. The compression. The machine's learning curve does not slow down, costs collapse, and adoption happens in years, not decades. The aggregate stays standing, but the gap, remember it, crushes a generation of workers caught in the middle, the way it crushed the weavers of 1811. It is the scenario that demands serious public policy, and we rarely get it in time. Scenario 3. The marriage. Neither substitution nor resistance, composition. The humanoid becomes a team tool. The worker becomes an orchestrator. And demographic scarcity makes the robot arrive as a reinforcement for a team that could no longer fill its own ranks. Which one is most likely? Honestly, a mosaic. Scenario 3 in the old rich countries. Scenario 2 in the most structured sectors. Scenario 1 in the world of physical chaos. The future rarely picks a single side. It tends to arrive unevenly, first in the warehouse, last in the bathroom of the old building. Let's land this, because projection without ground is just anxiety with better vocabulary. If this episode's reading is right, 3 practical moves follow, and none of them requires guessing the future. First, separate your value from the task. The task is what the machine learns. Judgment over the task is what it has not yet reached. Whoever executes today should start understanding the why of every gesture. The diagnosis becomes worth more than the execution. Second, learn to learn fast. The most protected skill of the decade is likely not a specific technique. It is the speed of switching techniques when yours changes. The ladder got shorter. Train the climb, not the rung. And third, Cultivate the bridge. Whoever understands how the pieces connect, the machine to the client, the workshop to the system, the problem to the context, tends to be worth more than whoever masters a single piece. That is the Nexialist bet. And this entire channel exists because of it. Your hands may do less in the future, but what they command could be worth far more. The weaver of 1811 got no warning, no map, no time. You are receiving the warning right now, with the map in your hand and the gap still open. Use it. Here at Nexialist Futures, we do not recap the news. We project what it means for your life. If this map served you, subscribe and ring the bell, because the next episode touches another certainty of yours, the 100-year life. If you will likely live longer than you imagine, what happens to your retirement, your career, and your time? And if you have not seen the episode on artificial intelligence agents yet, it is the other half of this one. See you there.